Hello and welcome to Wolfman Gaming. This is my Uncharted 1 Crushing Difficulty walkthrough, and this is chapter 5, also known as the Fortress. And this apparently is a chapter that is feared among a lot of Uncharted players, because I've read through a lot of message boards and some forums about this, and the chapters people seem to have the most problems with are chapter 4 and 5. And a lot of the problems people have with chapter 5 is the dreaded water room. And I used to think that the water room was extremely difficult until I started experimenting a little bit and I started studying how the spawns work in that room. And then I realized that it's not as hard as you may think. As long as you understand the spawns, you shouldn't have too much problems with it. But this game, or this chapter, can be hard, or is hard, for a few different reasons. And one of the difficulties with this chapter is the fact that in a lot of the fights, the enemies have a height advantage. And also, since this is a very old fortress, it has gotten a lot of nature into it. So to speak. There are a lot of vines, there's a lot of trees growing up through the courtyards and stuff like that, and that is something that becomes a problem, because enemies can see through all these trees and all the leaves and all that good stuff, and they can gun you down and you cannot, because we are only human and they are AI programmed by sadistic developers. But this is the first fight of the chapter, and I managed to get a really good start. I pick up the Uzi, and this is one of those moments where everything just works out perfectly. Because I start off, 4 enemies go down, headshots, all of them. And the Uzi is actually one of my favorite weapons in this game. I wish I could use it a lot more than you are allowed to do. Because a friend of mine asked me in the comments which combo of weapons I would prefer to play through this entire game with, and I answered her that the Uzi and the shotgun. Because the Uzi has a high rate of fire, and it has a pretty decent trade-off between rate of fire and damage output. And also, for those moments where enemies rush you and get too close, I like to have a shotgun. Because nothing stops rushing enemy like a shotgun blast to the chest. And that is the great part about shotguns. You don't even have to be good at aiming. You just point it in their general direction and the buckshot will do the rest. And here you will see a case of worst grenade throw in the history of mankind. I managed to bounce it off the wall and almost kill myself. Absolutely terrible. But as I said, this can be quite challenging due to the fact that the enemies are up high and you are down low, and they love throwing grenades at you. And as I mentioned before, on crushing you can't take that much punishment. So the key thing is to try to find the corners where as few enemies as possible can get an aim on you. As for example, that guy up there can become a big threat because there are 2 guys over to the other side, and if you put yourself in a position where you can kill them, he will be able to kill you. So he should be your first priority when it comes to the guys up on the wall. So I managed to take him out, another headshot. Apparently I was feeling good when I played this. It's one of those days, you know, sometimes when you play a game you just have that perfect flow and everything you do seems almost godlike at moments, and then you have those days when nothing goes your way. You couldn't hit the inside of a barn if it fell over you with a map and a guide and 3 tries. Don't know where I was going with that, but you know what I mean. Some days it just works and sometimes it doesn't work at all. And now I'm being a bit careful because the music hasn't quite died down. It died down right now, but as I've mentioned before, the music can be such a troll in this game. And I know now that there is one guy left. I don't know if he spawns in when you go up here, but you see, starts firing at me as soon as I get up on the wall. So we dive in behind this pillar, and I'm gonna try to take him down. Went perfectly. And that is something you always have to be aware about. That is the good part about watching a walkthrough, because sometimes there is one guy lurking, waiting for you to gun down all of his friends so he can wait for that opportune moment when you put down your guard, and then he will murk you. And this fight, I always run in through this door, or in through this little gateway, because there are two enemies coming out here. They are on patrol, they're strolling, talking, and one of them is dead. And the other one is gonna try to rush you. And this is a perfect spot to be in, because you can see I'm completely hidden behind this wall. He couldn't hit me if he had a nuclear warhead. But I did get a bit impatient, and went out too soon, and I had forgotten about this shotgun guy. That was a hard word to say. But once again, headshot, and we can move on. And in this little courtyard there is a guy manning a huge turret, and he is the least of your problems, or the least of your troubles. Save him for last, because as long as you don't go too far into this tunnel, he won't be able to hit you. And also the turret is quite nerfed. Even on crushing, it doesn't cause you as much pain or damage as the normal weapons do, so just leave him for later. Instead, focus on all these guys trying to rush you. But since this fight goes on for a little bit, I'm gonna talk about E3. I mentioned it a little bit in my previous episode, but now E3 has kicked off. There are some speculations going around, as there always is when you get close to these things. And I read an article today that Amazon apparently has listed Wolfenstein 2. So I am very hyped about the Bethesda press conference. I really hope they will announce another Wolfenstein game, because I have actually been playing Wolfenstein: The New Order the last few days, and I think it's a great game. I also like the Old Blood. I haven't played the previous titles in the series, except for Wolfenstein 3D back in the good old days. But I thought both The New Order and the Old Blood were great games, so I really hope they will release another one, because that was a great action game. And I really like the fact that you could be very versatile. You could stealth, you could go in all guns blazing. There was a lot of choice in that game, and also it had a surprisingly good story. Because I bought it, I just wanted to have something really brainless shooting game when I bought it. I thought to myself, oh, Wolfenstein, let's go out and shoot Nazis and zombies and zombie Nazis and robots for a while. And the story really caught me by surprise, and I was really impressed about how well designed it was. And this is one of those moments, going back to this game. The music had died down, all the enemies are gone, except for one guy, sitting with his fucking cell phone playing Pokemon Go while his friends are being gunned down by Nathan Drake, treasure hunter and psychopath. And that's what I mean, always be careful. Never let your guard down when you're playing this game, because if I had played this on brutal, I would have been dead right there. But going back to E3 once again. As I said, I really hope there will be another Wolfenstein game, and I'm also curious about what other things Bethesda will be unveiling. There is a rumor out that they will be releasing Elder Scrolls 6, which would be very fun, because I really enjoyed Skyrim. I think it was a really fun RPG game,
It's either very good.
I haven't played that many RPG games, so I really like the fact that you didn't have to play a certain class like you do in games like World of Warcraft and all that stuff. Instead, you could be good at everything, as I think you should be in an RPG game. Because role-playing is about choice and having possibilities, so I've never understood the fact that you can only be good at one thing. That seems to go against all there is about the possibility to choose. But I am no expert, I've never claimed to be, but that is just my opinion. And apparently maybe they're releasing also The Evil Within 2. And that could be quite fun. I enjoyed the first game, as I mentioned in one of my The Last of Us videos. It had some flaws, it wasn't as good as it could have been. But that's why they make sequels, to improve on the flaws of the first game, usually. And it's always fun to see what Ubisoft has cooked up. I guess we will see, of course we will see Far Cry 5 and also Assassin's Creed number 672, I guess by this point. And that kind of makes me sad or a bit disappointed, because Ubisoft used to make great games. Far Cry 3 was an absolutely awesome game. I really enjoyed that. Assassin's Creed 2 and its 2.5 and 2.7 in Brotherhood and Revelations were also great games, but now they are just rehashing the same things over and over again, and for some reason people enjoy it. And I don't understand why. I really wish they would let those game series just die and do something new. And I also have great hopes that Naughty Dog will do something new. I know that they are releasing Uncharted Lost Legacy, which I really look forward to playing. But I also hope that that will be the last entry in this series and that they will start something new, because Uncharted has had a really good run. It has produced 4 really good games. I do have the PS Vita game, Golden Abyss. I haven't played it that much, I only started a little bit because I didn't like the touchscreen function in that game. Because it came out when PS Vita was quite new and everything was about that fucking touchpad, and I don't want sticky fingerprints all over my screen, so... And also the aiming in that game wasn't as exact as it is in the home console titles, or whatever you call it. But at least Uncharted Lost Legacy is coming out. I will be covering it. If there is a new Wolfenstein game, I will absolutely be covering it on this channel. I've been thinking about covering the Old Blood and the New Order as well, but I'm gonna see how I do, what I do, or if I will do that. Because the games I've played so far on my channel aren't the most up to date. I am aware of this. And I will start to try to have more recent games. Okay. But as I mentioned in my previous video, right now there haven't been so many releases that I've been interested in. But as soon as a new game comes out that that I enjoy playing or that I'm interested in playing, I will try to get a walkthrough out for it as soon as possible. I will still continue to post these Uncharted videos twice a week, but if a new release comes out and I decide to cover it, I will probably crowbar it in between these videos. But we are getting close to the dreaded water room, everyone's biggest fear. So I'm gonna leave E3 for a moment and I'm gonna get back to the subject at hand. The great thing about this water room is that the checkpoint is just outside the room, and there are a few different weapons scattered about, so you can try different techniques to find what suits you the best. I think there is a grenade launcher, there is an AK, normal pistol, different things. But I like to take the West 44 Magnum pistol and an AK in here. And there are 4 spawns of enemies. The first spawn comes in front of you, so I'm being quite aggressive. I'm trying to use my West to take those guys out as fast as possible. Doing a mediocre job, wasting my bullets. Then the second spawn comes in while you're at the end of the first spawn, and it consists of, I think it's 3 enemies, and they come from your left. Then you're gonna have the third spawn that comes in from your right, and the last one will come in from behind you. And as long as you're being quite aggressive here, you shouldn't have too much problems. I was just checking behind me because I couldn't figure out where that bullet came from. It seemed like it came from behind me. But as you can see, I'm being quite aggressive. I'm shooting a lot, was what I was gonna say. Trying to really take my shots as fast as I can. And now we have taken down the first 2 spawns. The third one spawns in right in front of me, so we go a little blind firing, take down the first 2 guys, and we can just line up our sight and take out the last one. So now I'm gonna progress a bit further into the room and wait for the 4th spawn, which consists of 2 guys with shotguns, I think. First one goes down instantly, and the second one follows quite soon behind, if I hadn't run out of bullets in my clip. But down he goes, and that's the entirety of the water room. Not that hard, actually, when you know how it works. So now we're gonna do some more platforming. I'm gonna pick up some guns, try to find some good stuff to bring into chapter 6, because we are getting close to the end of chapter 5. And we have beaten what many people feel is the hardest part. For me personally, it's chapter 4. And chapter 7 is also quite interesting, but chapter 7 is hard due to bad game design. It has nothing to do with skill or lack thereof. You're gonna have to be very lucky with the spawns, but I'm gonna talk more about that when we get there. And that is a sad part about this game series, because they have a tendency to put in one chapter or one instance in some part of a chapter that is really lacking in design. Because this room, it is hard, but it is hard in a good way. It's challenging. But sometimes they put in things like chapter 7, where it's just dumb luck whether you make it or not, or how far you get, and the checkpoints are put just far apart enough to make you lose your fucking mind at times. Because you go through that chapter, you think that, oh, this time I made it to the checkpoint, and you realize when you get gunned down that no, it's a little bit further on. But I'm not gonna dwell on chapter 7 right now. I'm gonna talk more about that when we get there, because we still have to get through chapter 6 before we can get to chapter 7. And this is just some basic platforming. We're going up here, we're gonna raise the water level, a little bit Zelda style. Remember the water temples in Zelda? They can also drive you insane, especially the one in Ocarina of Time. I think it's quite interesting that they even admitted when they made the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time that the water temple was too hard in the Nintendo 64 version. And about 2 million players around the world said yes! Yes it was! Because that was terrible. But this is the end of chapter 5, and I want to thank you very much for watching. And I will see you again in my next video. So until next time, this is the Wolfman signing off.